Hello, everyone. Welcome to science class. Thank you for joining our virtual orientation to 8th grade science at Newark Charter School. My name is Tracy Soyson, and my contact information is listed on this screen. There are two teachers who teach 8th grade science at NCS. Namratha Bharadwaj is the co-teacher for our Block 1 science students, and she teaches other sections of 8th grade science on her own. I always start my back to school night presentations by thanking the parents, and I want to do that again this evening. I have been teaching for over 2 decades here as well as in other districts within the state. And I can say without a doubt that Newark Charter students are the best. They are respectful. They are genuine. They are good citizens. And in the classroom, they are engaged and they do care about their learning. It's because of you that they are that way. And that is why I thank you. I love my job because my students get me up every morning. And not many people can say that, but I can say that I am definitely working within my element, that I am following through with my calling. And again, I thank you to allow me to do that. Okay, so we are in a pandemic. This is uncharted territory. And this, without a doubt, is the most difficult year in my teaching career, simply because I cannot work with my students in person, and it kills my spirit to not have that personal interaction with your student every day. I understand how stressful and inconvenient this time is for everyone, but especially for our youth. So as the teacher, I need and want to be there for them as much as possible. And I need and want to be accommodating to their instructional needs. So I hope we can work together as a team to get our students through this very difficult time. Thank you for allowing me to say that. Okay, so I have some goals for your student in 8th grade science. We have 2 sets of science standards that we implement at Newark Charter School. We have the National Science Standards, which is NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, that the state of Delaware adopted back in 2013. I'll clarify that second bullet on the next slide. Obviously, I want to promote and plug our high school pathways as much as possible, such as biotech, computers, and engineering for our students. And then I'll address the state science test later in my presentation. So a huge core dimension that's embedded within the NGSS standards is something called science and engineering practices, which focus basically on 2 pedagogical philosophies. We want students to make sense of the natural world through investigation, and the content is what we use to supplement this inquiry process. Modeling or diagrams is a huge skill that's implemented in 8th grade science to explain natural phenomena. For example, this diagram models the science and engineering practices in 8th grade science. We always start with the core phenomenon. It's how we hook the students. We want them to ask, why did that happen? So in science class, your student will discover the why in 3 possible ways. We will ask them to identify, define, and explain the system involved with this phenomenon. Or we may ask them to find patterns and trends with the data that we collect during an investigation and use that data as evidence to explain the phenomenon. Or we can ask them to determine the cause and effect relationships to reason their way to the phenomenon, or reason their way through the phenomenon. This white section right here, this white halo, this is where we bring in the content. So as we implement these three processes in the classroom, we're also introducing the science standards at the same time. So this chart models a typical science lesson. This process is called gather, reason, and communicate. And it's very much promoted by NGSS. So first, the students are going to actually do it with hands-on investigations. They're going to see the phenomenon happening while they gather observations and collect data. Next, we're going to talk through it. This is what looks more like a traditional classrooms, because this is where you're going to see some direct instruction. You're going to see the introduction of content, and all of this is used to give reasons and explanations for the phenomenon. Finally, we're going to ask the students to communicate their understanding in written form or in assessments. This link takes you to the scope and sequence of the topics that are taught in 8th grade science. And you can go ahead and read this at your leisure. This is an attachment to the email, which was sent with this presentation. I just want to add this one disclaimer. During remote learning, please remember that instructional time is reduced by 60%. So we will get in as much as we can compared to a full school year of science. So in terms of supplies, your student during material distribution days, they received their Chromebook, graph paper, and a paper protractor. But I'm highly recommending that during remote learning, it would be wonderful if your student had access to a printer. Students can take notes during the lessons. They can work through practice problems. And the writing process is extremely valuable. It's a valuable experience for students because it helps them process and retain content better. So if you happen to have access to a printer, that would be wonderful. Just a quick side note, when we do return to live instruction, the students will need a binder with 8 dividers for science class. So you may remember your student in 7th grade science with their paper journal, right? Scientific journaling is huge at Newark Charter, and we're going to continue with it in 8th grade as well as into high school. So once we do return to live instruction, students will still journal. The science journals will still happen, but they'll be electronic. And we will baby step the students and walk them through this novel process when the time comes. We do not want you stressing about this right now. There's not much to say here. Will the state science test happen this year? We do not know. If it does roll out in the spring, we will devote some time, some of our science classes for review. So this slide clarifies how assignments are weighted in 8th grade science. Homework checks are graded on completion, not accuracy. And please, 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 check your students' grades weekly, especially during remote learning, so that we can catch things early and we can work together as a team so that your student does meet with success. So as we've said before, with COVID, we are in unprecedented times. Our students are stressed, they are overwhelmed, they are struggling with organization. And on top of all of that, they are stuck doing the majority of their learning on their own, and this breaks my heart. So there are some accommodations that I'm making in science to allow our students to meet with success. So if your student receives a low score on a process assignment, please remind them and encourage them to take advantage of the second attempt or the resubmission opportunities. If they do miss a deadline, I have 2 safety nets in place. Please remind them of this and help them follow through. I agree with our school policy concerning product grades. Please have your student contact me prior to the due date. If there is a problem, I will work with them as much as possible. You know that expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. So I need your help in making sure that the student your student is not giving up, they're not falling behind, and that they're following through. Just a quick note about the homework. Unfortunately, we cannot accept homework late because on the actual due date, we reveal the answer key on Schoology and we discuss the answers in class. And that is why the window of opportunity to earn points for that homework assignment has closed. Okay, I hope you found this information helpful. Please contact me if you have any questions or concerns. I highly recommend that you watch my second video. It's a tutorial on how to navigate through the Schoology platform to best monitor your students' progress in science. The video provides tips on how your student can stay organized and up to date on assignments. At a minimum, please save it for future reference. Other than that, thank you so much for your time, and take care, everyone.